With the year's end bearing down, the Coalition is in a sprint to finish its to-do list, ramming through legislation under urgency. One gets the sense MPs are ready for a much-needed break before the intensity resumes in election year.
My real preference is to make sure that your party vote national, and I think you're going to hear that a lot over the course of 2026.
We're going to run a very big and very aggressive turnout strategy at the next election.
Kia ora, ko Craig McCulloch aho, and e te purongo tōrangapū mō tēnei wiki. Welcome to Focus on Politics. This week we hear from the two major party leaders, their assessment of the year and their hopes for the next. 2025 was supposed to be the year of growth, so dubbed by Christopher Luxon in his sweeping State of the Nation address in January. Instead, the economy's sat stagnant, while the coalition's been tested by internal tensions and external protest.
Stand up! Fight back! Shame on Brooke Van Velden!
I'm not taking any lectures from frickin' Chris Hipkins.
We haven't turned the economy around in the way we should have, as fast as we should have.
He's been here 50 years, for goodness sake.
Sounds like he's getting ready to go with Labor again.
Don't make me laugh.
But is it a laughing matter? We begin with the Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, speaking here with Annika Smith.
It's been a tough year. It's been a big year, I think, for the whole country, to be honest, as everyone's been wrestling with some of the challenges we've experienced economically. And so you're very conscious of that. But, more optimistic, more positive, more determined that we are going to, make sure the country realises all the potential. So, I'm really proud of the way that we have found a way to work together, leveraging the talents and the skills that exist in the team.
You have worked together, and that's also in spite of there being quite a lot of public disagreement about various policies. We're seeing New Zealand First and ACT go toe-to-toe on the regulatory standards bill, for instance. We're seeing it ramp up. Do you get a sense that we're already in campaign mode already, even though it's not election year?
No, but it's been very important to me from the beginning that people have space to differentiate. And actually, when you think about the six parties that are in the New Zealand Parliament, that they all have different brand positionings, different policies, different constituencies, and you have to allow space for that to happen. And I think what you've seen is massive alignment at the centre and on the core important stuff. But on the margins, yes, there will be differences. And actually, as we go through the course of next year, of course, parties will be looking to differentiate. But I just think don't confuse that with the fact that actually we are still very focused as a coalition government on getting this economy growing, getting law and order restored, better health, better education.
You announced in January that 2025 would be the year of growth, and it's taken until this month, but economists are starting to say that the economy is turning the corner. Has the recovery in your mind progressed fast enough?
It's been challenged. I think the reality is we hit Q2 with Trump's Liberation Day, and that caused a huge loss of confidence. If you're an investor, you actually said, this is chaos, I don't know what's happening here. If you're a consumer, you didn't want to spend money because you weren't sure what was happening. And as you saw through that winter period in New Zealand was incredibly difficult because the reaction to the Q2 contraction in the economy as a function of the chaos and the uncertainty around the tariff policy, caused a huge amount of negative sentiment for people. And I was just very conscious it's incredibly difficult and challenging for people. And it's the fact that they've been through a massive COVID period of time. We were slow coming out of COVID, and they've walked straight into a recession by virtue of economic management being poor. And I know people want it done faster, and we're doing as fast as we can. We've had some parts of the economy recover well, but we're seeing now the signs of that recovery, and it's great to see media reporting on some of the positive stories that are happening. The question for us now, I think, is a really fascinating one. We'll continue to fix the basics and the things that need to be fixed, but actually we've got a real choice, and it's a really exciting time for New Zealand because the question is we will recover, we will come out of this, but what are we going to do to shape that recovery so that we set this country up for an awesome future, which it can have for our kids and our grandkids?
Just changing tack quickly to law and order, you have led a crackdown. You've introduced tougher sentencing laws, gang-specific offences. You're building hundreds of new prison beds in Hawke's Bay. The prison musters hit a new peak, 11,000 people. How much is this costing the country?
Well, actually, it's helping the country because what it's not costing the country is victims of crime being bashed and being victims of violent crime. If you think about how we're approaching running this government, it's what's the problem, what's a common sense plan, and how do we get better results, and then how do people feel it? And if you think about law and order, we had massive growth in violent crime, retail crime, ram raids, all of those things. That's the problem that we had. So what do we do about it? We go after gangs because they're a big driver of violent crime. I'm really proud. We have 38,000 fewer victims of serious violent crime. That's the murders, the muggings, the bashings, the homicides, all of that stuff we've made it, and that's come down in a really short period of time. We've had a 16% reduction in serious youth offending. We've had an 85% reduction in ram raids. Now, 2 years ago, we used to wake up every morning with 1 or 2 ram raids that had happened. And yes, we've had tougher sentencing, and yes, you're right, I think we have 1,900 extra prisoners in prison. That's our best place to rehabilitate them, but it means they're out of our community causing harm and suffering on New Zealanders, and that's what our focus has been.
Appreciate the cost in terms of victimisations in our community, and no one's going to argue with you that fewer victims of crime is a bad thing, but 11,000 prisoners, 150,000 a year, that's $1.6 billion annually. Am I right in thinking that you're saying that's worth the cost in terms of locking people up, keeping them off the street, reducing that harm?
Well, I can tell you the election in 2023, one of the major issues and major concerns of New Zealanders was the fact that violent crime was going up 30%. Ram rates were up 4 times. Retail crime had doubled. New Zealanders were just dealing with constant rising crime. And the previous administration had a focus on prison population and reducing that by 30%. And we want to do that as well. We want to see the prison population come down, but only because crime has come down. But what we're not going to tolerate in a society built on rights and responsibilities, you don't get to sit in a community and cause harm, pain and suffering on your fellow New Zealanders.
Looking forward to next year,
yes.
2026, how are election preparations going? Can you give us an indication of, policy areas that you'll focus on, issues that you'll focus on in terms of next year? What's top of mind for you when you hit the election campaign next year?
Yeah, look, without doubt, the number one thing is to make sure the economy is growing and that people are feeling that. That is our major focus. But we're also very focused on the fact that, yes, there's a lot to, to fix the basics, as I keep saying, but there's a lot to build out the future with as well. And when you look out at the New Zealand economy and the demography, we have to deal with some structural challenges around welfare, health and superannuation.
What about who you would work with again? Chris Hipkins has said he'd lay out closer to the election what parties he was willing to work with. Will National do the same?
Well, I think you've seen us actually prove that we can actually work with ACT and New Zealand First. I think, as I said, we've provided strong and stable government. All 3 parties deserve credit for the way they've worked together, despite differences they may have as well.
Do you have a preference, ACT or New Zealand First?
Oh, well, we've proven we can work with both. And my real preference is to make sure that your party vote National, and I think you're going to hear that a lot over the course of 2026.
Will you be National's leader at the next election campaign?
Absolutely.
How are you so certain about that?
Well, I think, I've seen, media comments, I've had those right from day one, and I think, the reality is that I came into politics, 4 or 5 years ago, and, we came in our second worst election result. The National Party was in a state of civil war. We'd had 5 leaders in 5 years. The media was used to a daily soap opera from the National Party, and there's been a bit of an overhang around that. And so I've had that right from the get-go and all the time that I've been involved in politics. But I know, what it took to rebuild a National Party from 20% to 37% and find a pathway to win an election after being in quite a dysfunctional state, and then to be able to form a coalition government.
The National leader, Christopher Luxon there, speaking with RNZ's Annika Smith. Over on the opposition benches, the parties have faced their own set of troubles this year.
If it transpires that it was deliberately released by somebody and that we find out who that person is, they won't be a member of the Labour Party anymore.
What does Bussy Galore mean? What does it mean with all those photographs?
We aren't happy with the leadership, we aren't happy with the conduct.
I still don't know what their problem is.
You're not going to shut me up.
Allow us to fix our whare.
The Māori Party's a mess.
A lot for Labour's leader Chris Hipkins to process. He too sat down with RNZ. Here he is with Giles Dexter.
It's been a big year for Labor. Getting our tax policy out of the way has certainly been one of the highlights for us. We know that the tax system needs to change. We spent a lot of time working through the detail, and I'm really confident that the simple targeted capital gains tax that we're going to take to the next election is going to be a really positive development for the country.
Clearly there were people within the party that wanted a wealth tax. Last time round, Labor had done a lot of work on looking at whether that was feasible. Are you concerned that you went with what might make you electable rather than what the party might think is the right thing to do?
Lots of people have lots of different views on tax. What we were looking at is 2 things. One, how do we shift the focus of New Zealand's economy so that we are getting investment in good, productive, well-paid jobs? At the moment, our national obsession with buying up rental houses isn't actually helping us to grow the economy, and that needs to change. So targeting a capital gains tax at that area in order to encourage more investment in the productive economy was our first priority. The second thing is, what are we using that money for? We've got a crisis in our health system. We've got to do more to keep people healthy. Free visits to the doctor will actually ease pressure on our emergency departments because people can go to the doctor when they need to, they can stay healthier, and we'll end up with fewer people in hospital.
Was there any consideration though given to using the CGT to go into the general pot or help pay down debt?
One of the biggest fiscal challenges that any incoming government's going to face after the next election is the escalating cost of healthcare. We've got an answer to that. A targeted capital gains tax will raise the sort of revenue that we need to keep people healthier and to plug some of those gaps in our health system. So free cervical screening, for example, again, it's another very sensible solution to addressing long-term problems in our health system.
The modelling though obviously relies on houses being sold. If those houses aren't sold, how are you going to pay for the doctor's visits?
All of the economic forecasts now are suggesting that house prices will return back to their long-run average, which is not radical big sugar spikes, but long-term growth that's in that sort of 3% a year territory. Yes, there's unders and overs each year, it doesn't go up in a straight line, but it's more likely to return now to that long-run average.
Part of the message at the party was that you want people to dream smaller. I mean, is that really a message you want to go into an election with?
No, it's not that I want people to dream smaller. I want people to have big hopes and big aspirations for New Zealand. My message to the Labour Party, though, is that any promises we make at the next election, I want to know that we can deliver on them. We've had a series of governments now who have encouraged people to be aspirational for New Zealand and have promised things that have been completely unrealistic. I don't think we can afford to do that anymore. I think people will lose faith in our whole democratic system if we see politicians continuing to do that. I'm not going to fall into that trap.
Part of those promises relies on coalition negotiations, though. I mean, at this point of the cycle, have you sort of decided who you will and won't work with?
At this point in the cycle, I'm absolutely 100% focused on getting Labour's share of the vote as high as I possibly can. People were asking me these questions a year ago when Labour was polling more around 30%. We're now polling comfortably into the mid to high 30s, so it's a different conversation. If I can get Labour's polling higher next year, it's a different conversation again. So we will set out before the election who we can work with.
When though? When?
What the areas that we have in common and the areas that are no-go zones for us. But those other parties are only just starting to announce their election year policy at this point. And some of them are completely reversing their positions on the ones that they were campaigning on last time. So I think we've got to allow that process to take place.
You could rule out working with National, right? You could rule out working with ACT. Why do you continue to dance on the head of a pin around New Zealand First?
There's a lot of water to flow under the bridge. My goal is pretty simple. If you want a change of government, if you want to see good, solid, positive leadership for the country, then vote Labour.
And what about Te Pāti Māori?
I think Te Pāti Māori's been in absolute shambles this year, and they're in no fit state to play a constructive role in government. So what I've said pretty clearly is that we're going all out to win all 7 of those Māori seats back.
Is it a wise strategy in the long run, though, to wipe out a party? MMP shows that people need friends.
Every election's different. There have been a whole variety of different outcomes in MMP elections. Parties have come and gone, and that will continue to be the case.
What about the Labour team? I mean, are you just relying on people having short memories? This is the same people as 2023 that the public voted out.
It's actually a very different Labour lineup now. So if you look at our senior team, our front bench lineup, there's only, I think, 3 MPs left there who were there before the election. The Labour Party has been through quite a period of renewal, but also what we're offering New Zealanders is quite different now. We're in a very different situation now to the one that we were in 2 years ago when we went into the 2023 election, and the answers that we offer New Zealanders need to be different as well, and they are.
Throwing forward to the campaign, you spent a lot of time licking your wounds afterwards and trying to win back Auckland. You said that you weren't listening last time around, but are they listening to you?
They are. We've seen a real uptick in our support. It's been a long, slow rebuild for us in Auckland. First 18 months or so of this parliamentary term, it was slow going. But we have seen, particularly in the last half of this year, a real increase in our support in Auckland and some energy really building behind our campaign.
How are you going to get them out though? Because that was one of the problems with last time round, was there were lots of facts and figures around like how important it was to get Aucklanders voting, and then they didn't. Even your support base didn't turn out?
Momentum matters in campaigns, and we didn't have the right momentum in the last campaign. That was pretty clear. You know, our trending in the polling sort of started going down from July onwards, which meant that we got to that critical turnout period and the momentum wasn't with us. This is very different now. The momentum's building for Labour. We've got a good groundswell of support rebuilding. We're going to run a very big and very aggressive turnout strategy at the next election.
I'm sure you've done a bit of reflecting on your own style of campaigning. I think you'd be the first to admit that it was awkward. How are you going to change how you campaign?
I was balancing a lot of things during the last campaign, including the fact that I basically only just become Prime Minister and was trying to lead the country through some really difficult circumstances. This time around, I've had the opportunity to go through a campaign. I know what to expect. It will be quite different for me. We'll be doing different things. I will be spending more time in Auckland than I did during the last election campaign. There will be a different mix of events that we're doing. So I've had a go at the campaign. I've been able to reflect on that. There'll definitely be things we'll be doing differently.
That was Chris Hipkins speaking with Giles Dexter. Next week, we bring you the reflections of the minor party leaders as we close out the year. That was Focus on Politics. Make sure to follow us in your favourite podcast app or seek out RNZ's new Politics NZ podcast feed and subscribe there. I'm Craig McCulloch. Thanks for joining us. Mā te wā.